Welcome to Words of Wisdom from Kick-Ass Women.
Stories and advice about moving forward, punching through that glass ceiling, pushing harder, and blazing trails from women we really admire.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Words of Wisdom from Kick-Ass Women. I'm Liz Brohan.
And I'm Mary Olivier. And today we are hungry for some wisdom, y'all, because our guest today, she's serving leadership lessons with a side of soul food.
That's right. And let me tell you who's here with us today. It's the one and only Shanita Baraka Ante. Yay! And she is the author of this amazing book called The Front Porch Leader, Great Grand's Recipe for Success. And I can't wait till we dive in and learn more about what that all means. But let me tell you a little bit more about Shanita. So for 23 years, she has been a professor at Columbia College Chicago, which is just amazing. And then her other credentials are just off the hook, y'all. So she obviously, with that role, she has shaped tens of thousands of young minds, and we appreciate that so much. But beyond that, she holds a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degrees. She is part of an executive leadership certification program from Harvard University. That's Harvard, everybody. That's pretty cool. And also the Lake Forest College of Management. She's a Forbes contributor. She's a distinguished Toastmaster. She's the board chair of the Metropolitan Club of Chicago. And she also serves on the American Marketing Association Board, Foundation, and Chicago Advertising Federation, and Illinois Institute of Technology. You don't sleep.
I don't.
Clearly. What?
I feel like I shouldn't be sharing a couch with you. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. But we would love to formally welcome Shanita. So say hi to our listeners, please.
Hello, listeners. Hi.
Well, we're hoping that today, Shanita, we know you're going to blend some Southern storytelling, Harvard-trained strategy, and a whole lot of heart. I get the vibe from you already, just how joyous you are. And so, listeners, by the end of this conversation, you may be ready to turn your own sweet potato pie problems into collard green solutions. But I'm going to need more info on that because I don't know anything about that. So
excellent. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to grab a notebook and a fork, I guess. All right?
Yes.
And let's dig in.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's dig in.
So welcome. We're thrilled to have you.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you both.
Oh, well, Mary just mentioned the perfect combo, right? So we really want to start there. And we also want to know about this whole front porch leadership that I believe you got a lot of this advice from your great-grandmother.
That's right, Liz.
Pretty
so
impressive.
let me say, listeners, first of all, I'm in this space with these 2 beautiful women, and I'm talking about collard greens and sweet potatoes, and they are looking to me as though they could use a little of that, not because they are hungry, but because they are, as Mary is saying, just their appetites are wet for this conversation, and I really, truly appreciate that. So my front porch leadership strategy came from a very kind of obscure place, perhaps, because it came from me traveling to a little city called Brinkley, Arkansas as a young girl. And we would make these annual trips there. And I would get there, y'all, and I would say, oh, no, the mosquito resort of the world is in this city. I was totally terrified and didn't like it. So for that reason, I sat on the front porch of my great-grandmother's home while my family, my cousins, they played and they had a good time. I was stationed on that front porch. But what came from that is me listening to conversations that were being had by the adult folk, particularly my great-grandmother. And she didn't speak as much with her voice. She wasn't a verbose woman, but her eyes, her body language when she sat in that rocking chair. So all of that I've bundled together in this book, and I'm going to share a few little snippets with y'all about it today.
You know, I think that's great because so many leaders forget that leadership really starts with listening. It's not about pontificating and PowerPoints. It's deeper than that, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Before Twitter and before all this other stuff and before we had, text messages. We just had to listen. Yeah.
So tell me how many people were on that front porch at any given time.
Great question, Liz. Well, it depends. Sometimes it would just be my great-grandmother and me, and I call her great-grand for short because everything that she did was both great and grand.
Oh, nice.
So I came up with that alliterative term for her. But if it was a Friday, there were a lot of people on that front porch because it doubled as a stoop for fellowship, I call it, and fish, because we'd have a fish fry happening in the kitchen, and on the porch, people would be, playing cards and listening to some music and sneaking a little sip of, whiskey or something that Great Grand didn't see. But it was a fellowship place on those days.
Nice.
Preview for Sunday. Same folks would be in church on Sunday, but you wouldn't know what they had been doing Friday night.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're atoning.
Correct.
They're atoning on Sunday.
For sure. There's a lot of atonement going on Sunday.
Absolutely. Okay, now you got to start by telling us, what's a sweet potato problem?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm interested in that.
I am a pie connoisseur person, first of all. I'm not a real cake eater. I like pies. But I may be a little biased because pies run in my family, particularly sweet potato pies. And there is something very specific about how you prepare a sweet potato pie. You got to boil those yams. You have to add the ingredients. There are different ways people do it. But the reason I came up with this term, collard green challenges and sweet potato pie problems, is because I think every problem can be solved with a good slice of sweet potato pie. If you just sit yourself down with a heaping sweet potato pie piece in front of you and put some whipped cream on top,
I know a few people who need that right now.
By the end of that eating session, you're pretty much good.
So, okay. So I'm curious about, what about people who don't know how to make that pie,
Sure.
right? What if we're sticking with the food metaphor, which, just fair warning, listeners, it seems like we're pretty much staying in the food metaphor for this entire...
And I'm not unhappy there.
No, nor am I, but I'm a little hungry.
Yeah.
But what, you see that as a solution. What if people are burning that sweet potato pie?
Yeah. So we'll stay in the land of the metaphorical musings here for a moment, but I will step back and say this in all seriousness. It's a strategy.
Okay.
Everything has to have a very, in my opinion, cyclical and strategic approach. You don't want to take things and just figure you throw it out in the wind and whatever lands is where how you solve your problems or where you go.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I use the term sweet potato pie problems and collard green challenges because I like the alliteration, but I think it's easy to remember. But in all seriousness, it really boils down to this. Problems are on a hierarchy. Some are going to be easier than others to solve. Some may fool us, and we think that they may start off as being a minute little something, and it exacerbates into something that we had no idea that was coming. So the reason why I use the analogy of cooking in general, and particularly sweet potato pie, is you have to start with the ingredients, so to speak. And I mentioned the yams, and you want to sit out well, let me back up. You have to have the right tools. You can't just have any old bowl, for example, when you're making a pie. So as a leader, as a problem solver, get your tools out. My great-grand had one bowl she used to make that sweet potato pie. You as a problem solver need to think about your trusted tools, in this case, the bowl, and then you get into all the ingredients. But to get to the chase, when you make that pie and you're baking it, sometimes when we're solving problems, we have to let them bake too. I think we have to rush in and have an immediate response and know the answer. And as problem solvers, sometimes you're letting it bake, and you have to, as it's baking, watch it, because you don't want to burn it, to your point. You want to watch it. You don't want to burn it. And then when you come out on the other side, before you take that slice, though, you got to let it do what? You got to let it cool down.
So this is a really good point, because I think a lot of, especially young women in corporate America right now, right? We want to, and I know it was true for myself when I was a young woman, is I want to have the right answer. And I want to jump in and I want to prove to my superiors that I've got an answer.
Yes.
Right? And I've often been so anxious to get to that answer that I'm not really thinking it through all the way, right?
No.
And I think that's a great analogy to let it sit, or else you're going to burn your mouth.
You're going to burn it up. And once you burn it, there's no coming back from that.
You can't say another answer. It'll shut you up.
Yeah, it will.
I have a feeling that our listeners are thinking right now, okay, So how do I tell my boss, I got to let the pie bake and then I got to let it cool? I mean, a long time ago, we used to say to our bosses, you know what? I'm going to sleep on that. So can we give ourselves permission to tell our bosses, let's slow down so that we can make sure that quality is being baked into our answer?
That's another great question. So here's the deal. The first time you do it, there's going to take some convincing. They won't necessarily understand. Or when you say, give me some time, let me let it bake, people are looking like immediacy is the currency of today. Everything has to be fast. However, once you're able to do that, and we can talk about that on another podcast perhaps, but once they have that pie for the first time, once you get them convinced and they take that bite, once you are able to let them know, oh, you won't have to have them ask you again. They're going to encourage you, okay, can you make another pie? Because it's that good.
Yeah.
Once they have that first bite of it, they're going to love it. It's just convincing them to have that first opportunity for you to do what you need to do.
I once had an account director and she's standing over my shoulder and she wants an answer. And finally she said, say something. And I said, I'm thinking.
I'm thinking.
You know?
Yeah.
I should have said, I'm baking.
Yes.
I'm baking.
I'm baking. Well, you can use, listeners, take anything from this broadcast that you can utilize in your own toolkit. So when you go back to your spaces, I'm baking is a good one because that connotes that it's coming together. And at the end of it, there's going to be something fruitful.
Not the other baking. You know what I'm talking about, kids.
Oh, I don't. Okay. My bad.
I'm lost.
I am
Maybe
too.
that's a good
my
thing.
bad.
Maybe it's a good thing. But just we're not saying to get baked. We're saying allow yourself to let it bake.
Sweet potato pie.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we're talking about. Nothing funny inside that recipe. All
exactly.
right. You also mentioned collard green solutions.
Yes.
I'm self-admittedly, I've never eaten a collard green.
I'm gonna change your life. I'm gonna make some. That's
I'm
gonna
a
be the
very
next.
adventurous foodie person.
Yes.
So
yes.
tell me first of all about collard greens, but how that equates to your philosophy and what you preach.
Okay, another one, and just so you all know, it's collard green challenges. I call them, and basically. So
Challenges. Okay, collard green challenges.
I can tell you something, and this is going to be maybe mind blowing.
Okay.
Next time you're in the grocery store, Mary. So there are different cuts of greens, so to speak. You know, you have collard, you have mustard, you have turnip. Not kale, y'all. Kale is mostly for salad.
Ugh, I hate kale.
But I eat kale too, but we're not talking about kale now. So basically, we had a tradition in my family, and we would have collard greens on Sunday. It gets real scientific. Turnips and mustards maybe during the week. That's a whole nother conversation. But collard greens are the big leaved ones. And basically, because any greens dish that you're making, there's steps involved in the process. It starts with you have to clean them thoroughly. You have to put them in a sink. My great-grand would put them in a tub of water, so to speak, soak them, take them out, dunk them back in again, and do that repeatedly.
Okay.
So that rinse and repeat. We see rinse and repeat on the back of shampoo bottles or conditioning products. And as a marketer, I used to tell my students that one line, rinse and repeat, skyrocketed sales for the product because you bought more because you were doing it twice. Well, the same thing applies with these challenges and how you use the greens analogy. You're going to need to rinse and repeat, similar to baking that pie. Don't always think that you have to come up with new solutions to things. Sometimes if you have a time-tested, as I do, strategy for some situations, you can just pull out the whole rinse and repeat process and give an accurate and time-tested response.
So you're
similar
putting,
to how you do with that.
You're putting process behind leadership.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And there's nourishment within that process.
Oh, yes, Liz.
And well, there you go. But tell us a little bit more about that and tell us how the listener might take that great advice and tell their boss what they're up to and what that process might entail.
So I'm glad you asked it that way. Sometimes, and I call this kind of the Spanx under the dress. I'm a big metaphorical person. Everybody doesn't need to see it. Everybody doesn't need to see it. So some of this language I'm sharing with you all listeners is not necessarily always has to be put out front. Like you don't need to go to your boss or your supervisor and say, I'm going to do a collard green challenge approach. And he's going to look at you and say, what?
Yes, you do.
Well, okay. But these are things that you can have in your own toolkit too, that you just know you're doing and you're processing on your own. When you're preparing collard greens, back to that, once you've rinsed them, once you've gotten them prepared, you put them in a big pot. You're going to mix in some some turkey, smoked turkey pieces is what I like to do, some onions and some other ingredients to make them good.
What about bacon?
But the main thing, you could do bacon if you want. It's your call, girl, but simmering it has to simmer. So similar to the baking of the pie, you're simmering. But the difference here, though, is that you have to go in there and stir it up, too. So what I am saying is when you're approaching these things, having the mindset of it's okay to stir things up. I mean, this is the Kick-Ass Women's Podcast, so you got to be able to stir some stuff up. You better stir it up. And don't be afraid. And in the case of cooking greens, you got to stir them, because if you don't, it'll just be one big glob.
Okay.
So being a person who's willing to stir things up, and it can be a measured stir up, a calculated stir up, something that you've researched and obviously gotten some information about, so that it's not a willy-nilly kind of stir up. But stirring things up is also what makes it taste better at the end. So when you are in a position of leadership, of teamwork, of reporting to others, and you see something that's an outlier, or you see something that you think can be done differently or better, it's your responsibility to stir it up.
And
I love that.
Can stir it up also mean more collaboration, so that other people have eyes on some of your thoughts and give you feedback or a sounding board?
Yes.
Okay.
So to use that again, with the greens in particular, you've got to mix in, and you asked about bacon. I mean, again, I said I use smoked turkey. Some people use whatever your preference is, but you got to collaborate. That in that pot, all of that merges together. That's a collaborative process, so that on the other side of it, you get the best possible tasting greens dish, if you will, that you can have, because they've all merged together and come together. Yeah.
Do you have any examples of like when you found yourself in a challenge and how you applied? Because I love this combination of just your Southern spirit in combination with your tactical Harvard-trained strategies. Is there a real-life example, maybe at Columbia or someplace else, where you're like, okay, I needed to do this and this is what happened? Because I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so, it's funny, and thank you for saying the Harvard trained on the right hand and in the Southern hospitality, if you will, on the other. I think I'm unique in that the convergence of those two things are not often seen. It's either one or the other. I'm a very heart-led strategist, if that makes sense. So I approach things with both my head and my heart. My great-grandmother had a term she used to use called bless your heart. And bless your heart was a double entendre.
Yes.
And y'all know, so bless your heart could mean a good thing, like, oh, you did that, great, bless your heart. And it was encouragement, and you would do more. Especially if she was talking about someone else. Bless her heart, or bless his heart could mean, you really messed up, you screwed that up. But bless your heart, you poor thing, you just didn't know. So for me, I think some examples are, I'm often in situations where I either am underestimated, or people will assume certain things about my ability to do. Not that anyone listening has ever experienced any of this. We're on the Kick-Ass Women's Podcast. That's why we have to have podcasts like this, because we have to talk about it. And so for that reason, I have always had to strategically take a step back and understand not to react emotionally, not to react with the heart-led part always, but to use my head and to say, how can I get an assessment of this situation? How can I think of what this problem is and approach it tactically, so that when people taste that pie, as I said earlier, once they taste it, it's okay. But getting them there. One example for me would probably be when I first started to teach at Columbia College. I knew my stuff. I walked into the classroom, and students, young adults in particular, are some of the most candid, honest. They're going to let you know what's working for them and what's not. I always say, if you ever want to test yourself out, get in front of young people. They will tell you, no filters. So I got into the classroom, and I was there, and I knew my stuff. And Mary, I had my notes, and I was wondering why I was getting these blank looks for me for 3 hours in. I'd been talking for 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'm like, I obviously know my topic, young people. Why are you looking at me? And it wasn't until about a weekend that I pulled a colleague aside and I said, I don't understand. I'm doing it. I got my PowerPoints. And they said, well, are you allowing the students to talk at all? Are you listening? Are you asking questions?
Oh.
And I said, well, why would I do that?
Right.
I'm here to teach. They have to hear from me. And then he said, you may want to balance that out a little differently. So needless to say, once I realized that and I went back in and I opened the playground, if you will, to let the students ask me questions and not just ask me questions, give their insights and their opinions, it shifted dramatically. And I find that to be the case on teams. If I'm the leader, I talk less. Simon Sinek has a book, Eaters Eat Last. You don't need to be in the spotlight as the leader all the time. You need to understand that actually the opposite is true. So in my book, I talk about my great-grandmother making sure everybody was served their plate first before she ate. She didn't eat first. She prepared the meal, but she made sure we all had what we needed. And so that analogy for me in the classroom was a tough lesson to learn because I'll be honest, my feelings were hurt. I was like, why aren't they, But once I had that magic bullet piece of knowledge and understood that I didn't have to be the center to be the center. And counterintuitive as it is, the last point I want to make is the more I made myself not the center and put the students in the center, my teammates in the center, my colleagues, guess who became the focus point?
Right. You. It's absolutely true. It's a hard lesson to learn. For the longest time, I thought leadership was having a big mouth. Right.
And I got to be honest, I think that it is the younger generations who have taught us this because we all came up in that exact same mindset. I've said this on the podcast before. I was told to shut up for 2 years, and that didn't serve anybody.
No.
Right?
No.
So now the younger generations are like, we got things to say. We've got opinions.
Yeah, you're right.
Let's all talk. Let's all collaborate. So, it has definitely been a big switch. You saw it in the classroom and I see it in the boardroom.
Yes.
I've learned this an interesting way as well. I worked with a person who was always so quiet in meetings. And she had a lot of good things to say, but she was very surgical in the way when she decided when she was going to speak. And that ultimately gave her the power. It was very interesting. So as we talk about power dynamics, I'd be up there, blah, 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 blah. And I was her boss. And she would just be quiet. But then when she'd speak, everybody took notice. And what she said was intelligent, right?
Yes.
And I was like, I can learn something from my own employee. I can shut up because I'm digging what she's doing right now. So I love that. And my mom did the same thing, cooked and was the last one to serve herself. So that's a good metaphor too.
Yeah. I just want to add on something you said, Mary. I'm a verbose person as well. As you cannot tell, I talk a lot and I tend to talk. My great-grandmother, though, again, was quiet. She spoke, as I said earlier, with her eyes. We knew she loved us through her hand in the kitchen making these dishes for us. She didn't give, long soliloquies on the front porch. But as you point out, we were drawn to her because when she did speak, we knew, okay, this is something coming. And it could have been something as simple as, close the window shade. But we acted with urgency and we knew that it was significant because it wasn't just all over the place. It was very focused and intentional.
So that's presence, right?
Yes.
True
Are there
presence.
other ways we can take kind of that front porch mentality into the boardroom or into a meeting with our colleagues and our bosses?
Yeah, so there are 3 tenets I'll share about the front porch leadership that I think you can take into those spaces. One is know your audience, know who's in that room. See, I didn't know when I used that classroom analogy, I needed to understand who those students were and what they needed from me. So when you go into a boardroom, know what is expected of you, know what people need from you, know that you are there as a conduit and not necessarily, this is what I like to say, back to teaching, I'm a God on the side, not a sage on the stage. So when you are a God on the side, there's a different approach than being a sage on the stage. So that's a front porch leadership tenet, that you're not the sage on the stage. The second one is we are saying here, understanding that immediacy or urgency doesn't have a place at all times. Now, there will be situations in which you got to move. You got to be quick. You got to know how to do it on your feet. You got to pivot unmistakably. However, what I learned and what the Front Porch Leader says is, again, assess the situation. Make sure you understand that it's okay to let things just take a step back. Get a panoramic view of the problem when you can. Like on that front porch, my great-grand could see the entire landscape of what was going on, right? Mm-hmm. She was the type of woman that didn't need a meteorologist. She could lick her finger and hang it, put it up to them and say, it's going to rain. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So those kind of built-in, kind of over time-tested abilities are something that we need to look at. So when we go into the boardroom, tap into those individuals that have experience or have the longevity with the company, or who may be quieter, but if you watch them, those are the ones who have the wealth and depth of knowledge. And the last thing I think that's important is to not underestimate your abilities and what you bring to the table. That's why I love Kick Ass for Women podcast. My great-grand instilled in me as a little pigtail wearing bifocal eyeglass girl, skinny as rails, that I could be and do anything. And I remember thinking, why is she saying that to me? Does she not see what I'm seeing when I look here in the mirror? But she poured into me. She poured into all of us. And that ability to do that as a leader when you're on the front porch of a boardroom, a classroom, your role is to prepare that next set. Whether it's your succession team, whether it's the next group of students. A lot of people like to keep their knowledge to themselves. They don't want to share it because they think maybe that's going to make the person better than them. So what? Yeah, they might be better than you, but that's the whole point, so that we can continue to grow and build. And so that is the approach she took, and I'm just appreciative of that.
I'm going to take like a weird hard left because we're talking about food, and you said, I
was trying to pull it away from food, Mary.
I have to go back because there was a phrase I heard many years ago. Somebody asked me, who filled your jelly donut? Right? And a lot of times our jelly donuts get filled with belief systems and stuff that's not necessarily true about you. So, for example, this is actually true about me. I'm a clumsy person. Mm-hmm. I lack grace. My whole childhood, my father would say, you're so clumsy, you lack grace. That filled my jelly donut, and I believed that it became part of who I am. Now we look at the business, right? If you stay open, and I was like, squeeze out the stuff that's not working for you and fill with the stuff that will work for you, right? Yes. So I know it's very odd, but I do visualize. I'm like, I don't need to believe that about myself anymore. And then when you're around people, the quieter ones, and I found that, I don't know about you, Liz, but now that I'm an older woman, I've gotten a lot quieter. Outside of this podcast, I've gotten very quiet. And I think, pay attention to those around you. Look for those quieter ones. Yes, the older ones. We have a lot of wisdom. And I know it's not fresh and snappy, but we've lived lives. And if you want to fill your jelly donut, you might want to start with talking to the ones who are awfully silent sometimes. So.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I'm looking at Mary here, listeners, and Liz as well. I mean, I don't see clumsy at all because you put this outfit together and that hair is perfectly feathered. So you can't be clumsy with the comb.
Thank you. I know. I reject being clumsy.
That's right.
I've nearly knocked my microphone off when I said
Right, totally ejected from your donut.
Exactly.
No more. You're not filling me with that. Right?
But I do think what you're saying is that we're in a position now where we can move into mentorship, right? And mentorship does mean we get to listen and not be so reactive and not be the doers, so that we can pass on to younger women, the leaders that we're hoping to influence here today, that we know you're going to have to take a lot of action. It is going to have to be quick, but give yourself permission to listen.
I mean, gosh, look who we're sitting with right now on our couch, right?
But you don't strike me as anybody who doesn't act all the time.
Yeah, you're right about that, Liz. I think that's true. But about the mentoring piece, there's reverse mentoring too, and I think that may be what you're alluding to. A lot of these younger folk have a lot of information, whether it's, and I don't want to typecast or stereotype, but technology related things. For example, some of the younger folks, because they're just born with that in their DNA. I have two sons that are 28 and 25 now, and they teach me a lot. I think we just have to be open to having ourselves receive as much as we give. And I think that's what you're referring to. I'm very open to that. But I have a lot to tell people too, and I don't back down from that. I don't think we should, but it's a reciprocal dynamic to be open to that.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. What else can we take from Great Gran? Because I'm feeling like I'm getting to know her, even though she uses her eyes and her hands to be expressive and show love and nurturing. But I need more.
Let me say this. This is all in the book, but I'm going to give you all a little bit more context about this woman. Okay, so I talked about her eyes. They were steel colored, so cement colored gray. Her hair was white like cotton candy. She was tan like a mix of a cappuccino or nutmeg. She wore house dresses a lot. Many times with flowers, so I used to call her walking flower bouquet. Her knee-high stockings, which she preferred, were in a race to see which could reach her ankles the fastest, because they never made it all the way up to her knees.
That's great.
She sat in a rocking chair on the front porch, and she had a wad of tobacco stuck in her cheek. So she didn't smoke, but she would chomp on this tobacco and she would squirt it with perfect proficiency into this tin spit can, which was a Folgers coffee can, but it worn off. So that's a little bit about her physically.
I love her. Oh my gosh.
But just like I said, a wealth of love and sternness too. I mean, she could give you that look, and you knew what it meant. All bundled together. As a kid, I wish I could tell you that I had all this vision and I knew, Liz, what she was giving me. I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
I was just on that porch because I didn't want to go out there with those mosquitoes. But in retrospect, and when I sat down to write this book, and I write about her a lot in Forbes and other places, when I teach, she came up. It's like I could hear her whispering in my ear. And it was until I sat down and really, I put a picture of her up near me, and I just started to channel her. And I started to say, you were given all these gifts, Shanita. You're a writer. And it just started coming very freely. And that is where all of this Great Gran Front Porch Leadership, it kind of wrote itself, because I said, oh, that's something you need to share with the world. So this is my gift that Great Gran gave me that I'm now giving to others. And hopefully by hearing this recipe, they can apply it.
Well, we're sure glad you've shared your recipe and this gift. It really
and I'm going to bring
is.
you some collard greens, and I'm going to bring you some sweet potato pie. Y'all can share. I'll
We
beg
will
you, because I
share.
do cook these things.
But I have one more question.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Are you ready to take over the front porch? Are you ready to take over that rocking chair?
I am ready to take over the front porch, but what I want is for you, Liz, and you, Mary, to be right there with me on that front porch so that we can look out at the world together and let them know what it means to kick ass. Although my words, your words, and your podcast, not Great Gran's. But yes.
All I need is a pillow in the front, the top step.
Yes, you got it.
We just want to thank you so much for sharing your heart and
this
your
was
humor
great.
And your stories.
Oh my gosh, so good.
I'm so glad we
happy
feel
to
like
be
we know
here.
your great grandmother.
Yes.
And I would strongly encourage our listeners to pick up Shanita's book, The Front Porch Leader, Great Gran's Recipe for Success.
Yes.
So get out
Absolutely.
there and get it for her and,
Yes.
and show Great Gran some love. Shanita.
You can find it on I have a website, www.shanitaspeaks.com. It'll be on Amazon at the beginning of 2026.
Nice.
Or you can reach out on
Nice.
LinkedIn to me as well.
Yeah, hit
That's
her
great.
up.
That's great. So everybody reach out, because we've all got a lot to learn from all of you, your
Yes.
entire family,
The entire
right?
family.
Your entire family.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't want to forget to remind our listeners to subscribe to words of wisdom from kick-ass women, where every conversation serves up a delicious plate of curry
Yum, yum, yum.
with a side of sass.
Absolutely. And let me tell you who else is sassy. Our sponsor.
Yeah, she is.
The Motion Agency. They are the largest female-owned independent marketing communications firm, I know in Chicagoland, but I suspect maybe, the nation as well. So please check them out if you have any marketing needs. They're going to be the ones who can get you through it. So everybody, thank you again. You're all kick-ass, and keep kicking ass until we can all meet again on our next exciting episode.
Thank you. Thanks, Shanita.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.